Hello and welcome everyone. Today we will engage in discussion with specialists and economic researchers on the latest developments on the global economic arena. The year 2024 is a unique one for both the East and the West. While individuals are experiencing change, they are also reassessing, reconsidering and positioning their relationships and balance with one another. Whether within the West or between the East and the West, there has never been 100% consensus, just as there has never been 100% differences on how competition and cooperation should be positioned. The challenge remains on how to use consensus to overcome differences and mutual collaboration to increase one's competitive capabilities. The perspectives on economic and technological development, as well as broader issues, have been deeply analysed and debated by experts in respective fields, analysts, diplomats, and others. One particular example of development is China, which today stands as the second largest economy in the world, maintaining a high growth rate. Many analysts define China as a global challenge, while China itself considers that it is not a challenge but an opportunity for global cooperation. From a Western perspective, how do we evaluate and view China's development over the past 75 years, particularly in the last 20 years in terms of its economy, and in the face of a future world where China's presence is impactful to the world?
Well, what we've seen has been a remarkable change of events. So since basically 1978, China has seen unimaginable figures in terms of economic growth and development. It has been able, over this time, to lift millions and millions of people out of poverty. Also, developing public infrastructure, transportation, energy, housing. So it has really gone through a very fundamental level, a process of change.
China has been pulling itself up by its bootstraps. It used to have a very agricultural economy, and it has slowly been replacing that with an industrial economy. It didn't happen evenly throughout the country. Essentially, you've got the centres in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong and Guangdong province, which were the initial places where industrialisation happened, and the rest of the country was way behind that. And they have gradually brought industrialisation to a bigger and bigger proportion of the country, and they are almost in the situation now where the whole country has been modernised.
China's been breathtaking. Every year since I was born and a bit before, it's been growing at 9 to 10% every year on average, with one or two exceptions. And it's done that by focusing on investment and on manufacturing for export.
China's clearly become one of the world's greatest economies, largest economies and most influential economies. The world's biggest factory, manufacturing the vast majority of goods. So they're investing in huge projects like the One Road, One Belt project, and setting themselves up to be a major force in world trade, especially on land.
In 2015, they implemented something called the Made in China strategy, and that is to move to high added value products that are actually made in China. And next year will be the 10th anniversary of this, and they're well along the road now. So, for example, they are the world leader in solar panels, in wind turbines, in electric cars, and also they've got many initiatives in artificial intelligence. They are on the cusp of producing their own major passenger aircraft to compete with Boeing and Airbus, and in many other areas.
Well, that growing at 9% a year, we in the West can't really give anyone any lessons given our growth rates. So it's been extraordinary. That has lifted 800 million people out of poverty in China. So that's been extraordinary. We have certainly seen moves into aerospace, computing, electric vehicles, car manufacturing generally. The economy of China is changing. It's no longer the kind of more basic products, but it's certainly becoming more technologically advanced.
So earlier this year, China announced an ambitious growth of 5% in 2024 alone, whilst Britain only has an expectation of 0.2%. So it is a massive growth in China in the first place. The economic growth over the past 2 decades is to people in China has been an astounding 3,000%. At the World Economic Forum annual meeting of the new champions, President Xi stated, "China, large market, is open for business." The rapid growth of new industries and drivers have buttressed the sound and sustained development of the Chinese economy. Peng Seng, the president of the China Society of Economic Reform, stated he was fully confident that the reality of 5% growth will happen this year. So I think, obviously, from a British perspective as well, Britain looks to China as well as really the growth provider to actually sustain world economic opportunities at the moment. And I think, from green issues as well, obviously they are one of the leading countries in the world now that is really creating sustainable products, sustainable renewable energy. I think it's going to be a key role now in the economy, quite honestly, of the world. Because I think, globally at the moment, China is not a sleeping giant anymore. It is a giant of its own volition. And I think the economy at the moment is that it will drive other economies at the same time. So I think the reality at the moment is that China is really the engine behind the world economy.
Hands move northwards, many other changes. And the key things that we need to achieve is to reduce CO2 and methane emissions and slow down the rate of rise at which the ice is melting in the Arctic and Antarctic. And basically, technologies that can help in this are really important. The most important thing is we are going to have to replace hydrocarbons, probably with liquid ammonia as a fuel, and having engines that burn liquid ammonia is a key enabler to being able to do that. And if we were to replace petrol and diesel with ammonia, we would need to scale up global ammonia production by about a factor of 100 over the next 10 or 20 years. In an ideal world, it would be green ammonia made from natural resources.
From a productive perspective, again, shifting away from fossil fuels into renewable energies, right? And this does not mean only adding up renewable energy to an energy matrix that's heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Most countries in the world, they are investing in green energy, but they're not stopping burning fossil fuels. So that's not helpful at all. So from a productive perspective, it needs to be really about transitioning and not just accumulating different sources of energy, right? If we're still burning coal and making solar panels or windmills, it doesn't really answer, right? It doesn't really address the question. And on the other hand, again, on a more the more social level, we need to shift our priorities into what are basic human needs, like housing, clothing, and energy, or food production and water, a clean environment, social cohesion, this type of stuff. And rather than relying on huge amounts of goods that we really do not need. So that, of course, calls for an unimaginable level of transformation that can only be pursued from a social and political perspective.
Where I think we're really failing too is we should be focusing on community energy. Renewables have the potential for each community to generate a lot of their own energy and to own that energy and to make the profits from that energy. So rather than a handful of big multinational energy companies supplying the electricity that we need, if we have each community generating electricity, each household generating electricity, solar panels on the roof, a battery in the kitchen, and people then really start to think about their energy use, because you can get your energy bill down to zero. And isn't that quite exciting and quite fun?
When countries develop economically, their demand for energy goes up. So the challenge will be making sure it's more environmentally sustainable. And the good news is great there. The world invested twice as much in solar panel power than all other energy combined. And China was a really important part of that last year. So that's growing. The cost of solar panels have dropped by 30% in just 2 years. And if you spend $1 on renewable energies like solar and wind now, today in 2024, you buy 2 times more energy than you did back in a decade ago. So all of the metrics are really good for renewable energy, and that helps to square this tension between environmental progress and social progress, because in effect investing in renewables, particularly solar, is a bit of a no-brainer now. We've had 100+ years of growth based on fossil fuels and climate damaging technologies. We've grown from that. So I think one of the key challenges with the environment or sustainability is this balance between doing the right thing for the environment and doing the right thing for society and your people.
If we shift our focus or accelerate the reduction in methane emissions, we can actually buy ourselves more time before we get to that tipping point, which at the moment is estimated to be 2030. So that's what I came back with, realizing, wow, the world needs to be focusing on methane. We can actually reduce global warming by between 0.2 and 0.5 degrees if we cut methane emissions by, I think, between 30 and 50%, something like that. But you get the idea that cutting methane will give us more time, and therefore we have to do it. The human race currently produces 105 billion tons of organic waste every year, and only 2% of that is recycled. Now the remaining 98% is dumped, landfills, rivers, oceans, and that causes tremendous destruction. In a landfill, it causes destruction down in the earth, and it causes destruction up by releasing methane. So avoiding organic waste going to landfill is a huge thing. And there's so much work to be done because we're only doing 2% of what needs to be done. And that's the huge challenge upon us. And organizations like the World Biogas Association are taking the lead in advocating the proper use or the proper channeling of organic waste from municipal level to global level and local level. And one of the major advocates for redirecting organic waste into a channel which creates clean energy, i.e. biogas, which also has an impact on the situation with regards to food security and energy security, because if you're producing biogas from organic waste, you're not having to drill for gas. So therefore, it has a positive impact on energy security for the world. It has a positive impact on food security because the digestate that comes out of a biogas plant can be used as biofertilizer. And it also has a positive impact on economic growth because it creates millions of jobs. If we have a mechanism where organic waste can be channeled into anaerobic digestion plants, then that's good. So we have to figure out how to do that. It's really easier said than done, but if you think about it, if we change our habits and our policies at a municipal level, a waste management level, then it will happen. The redirection of that waste will happen. The avoidance of methane coming out of landfills will happen, and the reduction in dependence on natural gas will happen because biogas can be injected into the gas grid and can be mixed with natural gas so that we can still have the use of gas, but it will be clean gas, a green gas, that is biogas.
Economically, I think that it opens up new sectors, right? New activities. That means also more jobs and more growth, right? Which is not something necessarily connected with the environment, but if it's meant to be as really a transition from fossil fuels to renewables, for example, then it's something that is welcome. So there will be a lot of, it will heat up the economy in the sense that renewables and whatever, just as in any other type of innovation, right? Green technologies have that power. So as these technologies they get spread over the planet, then of course it can have very beneficial economic effects. But again, environmentally, I'm not so sure whether we can rely on most of the technologies that we are having at the moment. So from an environmental perspective, everything has its impacts. So we need to be cautious about that, right? And again, I think that the most important thing is stop doing things that we have been doing in the past. And I think that China has a potential to lead the way in that perspective and set an example of how we can make effective transitions and not only pile up more production on top of what we already had before.
And I think, one of the other issues that's not talked about nearly enough is food security. This is going to be the coming issue of the next 10 or 20 years. We've already just seen the horrendous floods in Spain, and that's had real impact on lots of the, particularly fruit and vegetable supplies around Europe. The climate emergency means there are going to be real issues with food security. You look at the fact we have ageing populations around the world. We have a broken food system. What we would say as Greens is we have to stop factory farming of animals. All of the issues about obviously animal welfare, but also about climate emissions and about food waste. You're taking perfectly good food that humans could eat and feeding it to animals to get a small amount of food out at the other end. That's a huge waste. So we need to think about changing the food system.
The big mega trend that we're here to discuss really is sustainability. So you might call it environmental protection, but I look at it more widely than that. Sustainability is about the ability of a company or a business to sustain itself for the long term. It's not just about the environment, climate change, although those are really, really important. But do you have the workforce you need? Do you have the access to technology that you need? Do you have, are you affecting the world's commodities or food resources unduly? Because if you are, you're not going to be able to sustain yourself.
How do we define value on things? And again, that comes full circle back round to, you know, do we value the planet? That's our legacy. What are we handing over to future generations? So the decisions that we make now on a daily basis, I mean, monthly, yearly, decade, they all contribute. It's not to get overwhelmed by that, as you know, small differences can have a big impact over a lifetime. So, you know, just being conscious about the decisions we make and thinking about it.
Well, on top of these other things, I think that there's a lot of room for international cooperation. It's really hard to talk about one specific country when it comes to a challenge that is global, it's planetary, right? So it's not only necessary but urgent that nations come together in an uncompromising way, right? To actually set out ground rules and goals for where we want to be or what we want to achieve in the next decades, because we do not have a lot of time. We're talking about decades before we see much higher levels of disruption, right, in terms of extreme climate events and scarcity and crops being failed crops, right? So we do need a concerted international effort, and countries like China do have a lot of power, and to have a country like this with this type of intention and openness to incorporate deep changes in order to get to our goals, then that would be something of extreme value, right? To have someone like that at a table and really saying the truth.
If you were to look at the startup space in terms of the businesses that are emerging, and the type of teams that are coming together, I think it's really exciting, because you'll find that, or certainly the people that we've met along the way and on this journey that we're on, they're global teams. They really are. So in essence, it's thinking that the world is more of a village. And when you think like that, you just go, wow, so I do something here and it impacts the whole village. Yeah, of course it does. So that bottle I just threw on the side of the road, I'm impacting the village. It might take 10, 15, 20 years to break down, but someone somewhere at some point is going to have an impact on that.
So when people who have peace in their heart, joy in their heart, pleasantness in their heart, when they come together, they're going to create communities that are going to create beautiful, sustainable economies, create beautiful projects together. Greatness is always about the amount of greatness that you have, if we could quantify greatness, is the amount of service that you give back to the world. So I'm just focused on what is that I can do right now, what is in my hand and my power, showing up in the world in a beautiful way, that with my way of being, I could spark more peace, more love, more care in the world, more kindness in the world.
Recently, China has intensified its efforts to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, decrease the use of fossil fuel-based hydrocarbons, generate larger amounts of clean energy, improve and strengthen supply chains, and increase investments in green industries. Additionally, priority is being given to equipping the workforce with green skills, knowledge, and competences to adapt to the new demands of jobs emerging in alignment with the green economy. Focusing on China's economic development, the deepening of reforms, and its openness over the past 20 years, particularly the impact of the concept of green industry as a core element in the future global economic development, how do you evaluate the measures taken to promote the green transition? Let's hear the thoughts of experts in this matter.
Well, a lot of people are saying, as far as the renewable energy and the sustainability sector is concerned, we need to watch China because firstly, they're the largest manufacturers of batteries. And batteries, of course, will play a huge role in the EV sector and the energy transition in general. And they've been investing in nuclear, they've been investing in solar, and they have huge potential in biofuels and biogas, and therefore are going to play a major role in clean energy as well.
China invested more in solar panels and created more solar panels last year than the rest of the world combined. For example, it has a target of hitting 1.2 gigawatts of power production from renewable sources by 2030. It's looking like it's going to hit that capacity level by 2025. And actually, the data that I saw today from Carbon Brief suggests that China's already peaked in terms of its fossil fuel its emissions. It actually could go down this year, which it did go down during COVID, but this is the first time that, notwithstanding a massive global pandemic, carbon emissions have gone down. So that corner is being turned. It's being turned for lots of reasons, including the rollout of solar, but also more hydros come online in China in the past year, for example.
What I know is that they've made huge investments. I've heard $25 billion of investments into green energy, and they're currently responsible for 50% of solar and wind energy production in the world. And they're going to be big players in the EV sector and are going to be giving Western EV companies a run for their money. They'll be able to produce electric cars much cheaper. So they are committed to all the top renewable energy sectors. Their potential for bioenergy is also huge. They have one of the largest capacities for bioenergy. So if you look at all the solutions out there for clean energy, you're talking about solar, wind, nuclear, hydrogen, and bioenergy. They are across significant players in all of those fields. So therefore are going to play a significant role on a global level in supporting the clean energy transition or contributing to the clean energy transition.
I think one of the things that really needs to be challenged is lots of people who say that Britain shouldn't be taking climate action say, but what about China's emissions? But I think there's three things that really need to be said about that. First of all, China is very much leading. The stats are that the International Energy Agency says by 2030, between now and 2030, 60% of new renewable installations will be in China around the globe. So China is doing a great deal. Secondly, there's the issue of historic emissions. The US by far is the greatest historic emitter. UK is also very much up there because we industrialised early. The Carbon Brief, the website, did a study recently that said that in terms of total emissions, China may never exceed the US. So we have to count those historic emissions. And the third and really crucial thing is that most of those counts are based on territorial emissions. So those are the emissions that are actually coming from on the territory. The UK's Independent Committee on Climate Change says we should shift over to consumption emissions. So who actually uses the products that are producing these emissions? If you buy in the UK a new washing machine, or you buy a new shirt made in China, those emissions should count against the UK, not against China if they're making things for us. So I think it's really important to challenge those, oh, but what about China kind of arguments when we're talking about the climate emergency. We need everybody, every country to make changes to their systems to deliver a world living within the planetary boundaries, living within the climate limits. So China has to be a big part of the solution in that space.
In terms of the future, China's got produces and buys more electric vehicles than any other country in the world already. It produces more batteries, lithium batteries, than anyone else in the world. So it's doing all the right things to change its economy in the way that we discussed earlier, i.e. dealing with a smaller population, dealing with deglobalization, and dealing with sustainability concerns. So it's doing all the right things, but like the rest of the world, we just need to do them much quicker. The world, if it's going to hit its 2-degree centigrade targets, which is the top end of where we want to be by 2050, we need to reduce carbon emissions by 5%, not just one year, but every single year and between now and then. So there's a lot to be done. I think with China's might and economic power, it can help drive that forward. But we shouldn't forget the rest of the world. The EU is making big changes. We have a carbon border adjustment mechanism in the EU. The UK has a carbon tax, as does the EU. There's lots of tools that the whole world needs to take, and we certainly share a common goal with China and elsewhere in reducing those emissions.
There are some conversations going on for quite some time at the political level. So China has this a concept of ecological civilization, which is already ingrained in political discourses and in their plans for economic development and also in constitutional reforms that bring also this idea of more harmonious relationship between humans and nature.
President Xi announced at the Climate Ambition Summit, China will lower its CO2 emissions per unit of gross domestic product by 65% from 2005 levels. So he will increase the share of non-fossil fuels in primary energy consumption to around 25%. And most importantly, Yale University, which is the top university in America, has an environmental school, and it states that China has achieved stunning growth in its installed renewable capacity over the past 2 decades, far outreaching the rest of the world. And in November 2023, China climate envoy Xi Jinping and John Kerry, USA climate envoy, shook hands on a pledge to triple renewable energy globally by 2020 or 2030. So I think the reality at the moment is all the parties are talking. What is really necessary right now is, as I've been to conferences before where the Chinese have actually sort of helped in so many areas of work, because they have such large amounts of skill bases themselves. And so I think the reality, what is happening at the moment is that President Xi is driving the force forward, and it's being seen in all sorts of ways. So for example, again, what is the royal household doing in Britain? That's obviously one of my main interests at the same time. And already Prince William has been reaching out to President Xi for his Earthshot campaign as well, because he understands straight away that China is a powerhouse especially of renewable green energy issues and products at the same time, things like electric cars, things like solar panels. And he's really wanting now to actually build bridges between China and Britain at the same time. And I think it's very, very important now that the economy that is growing in China is used to inspire other economies across the world.
You know, China is transitioning to a circular economy, which is a significant thing for the whole world. China's always been pretty good at waste management, but they now are realizing that the circular economy has so much more potential, and they are in a position to reduce the dumping of organic waste significantly, and they are highly likely to, lead in that sector from an efficiency point of view, and they will be not only big contributing from their domestic market, but they will be producing a lot of the technology that the rest of the world use to anaerobically digest organic waste. So, as with many sectors, they do it great themselves, but they also help the rest of the world do it better and cheaper because of the economies of scale that they're so good at realizing. So I think at the moment, the important thing is for the world to work together, because it's only through global partnership and global cooperation that we can actually achieve the scaling that we need. So the impact on the global economy will be significant. There's such a major force in the global economy anyway, but when China does something, they do it big. They know how to scale, and they know how to do things cost effectively. So if they apply their general modeling and economies of scale that they're so good at, if they apply that to renewable energy and the clean energy transition, they'll have a big impact on that, and a big positive impact on efficiency levels of economic economic growth, and in particular growth in clean energy solutions.
Based on the insights of experts from various fields and the initiatives being implemented by China, it is evident that by adhering to the main objectives targeted for 2030, the country is on track to achieve significant results in the green transition. By 2035, it is projected that China will establish a green economic system founded on the principles of a circular economy with low carbon emissions. The key goals include optimizing the development and protection of green lands, promoting the green and low carbon transition in industrial structures and the energy sector, advancing green transitions in the transportation sector, and applying green transition principles to urban and rural development. Are these goals intended for just one country? Absolutely not. These are directions that should be the focus of all nations, tailored to their specific context, but aim at coordinating and harmonizing effects to halt the phenomenon of global warming, which increasingly threatens life across the planet. In this, inclusivity remains a central theme. This green transition with inclusivity at its core means integrating the demands of the green transition to overall economic and social development and promoting it across all sectors, fields, and nations. Countries worldwide, from the UK to Brazil, Canada, Australia, and others, are taking measures to achieve the green transition. The European Union has also implemented significant steps, setting ambitious objectives to achieve this cause. By engaging with specialists on the topics we discuss, we aim to shed light on some of the critical developments that are at the forefront of global attention today. Stay tuned. More programs and documentaries will be prepared by our team. Thank you for watching.